Welcome back, everyone. This is Module 6, Part 3, Qualitative Adaptations in Word Reading. And today we're going to be talking about eliciting responses and providing feedback. So the objectives for this part is you will learn how to elicit frequent responses and provide effective feedback during word reading instruction. And then also how to adapt reading instruction to improve these supporting practices. So again, we're talking about these principles of explicit and effective instruction that we can use to do things like evaluate a program or curriculum that we're using. And we can also use these principles to think about how we can improve and adapt the kinds of instruction that we're providing to students. So we're going to be thinking again today in our model of explicit instruction. And in parts 1 and parts 2, we focused on modeling and practice. And today we're going to be thinking about these supportive practices, supporting practices. And in particular, we're going to focus on 2 of these, eliciting frequent responses and providing immediate specific feedback. These are particularly relevant when we're talking about teaching word reading. So eliciting responses and providing feedback, why are we learning this? And it really is all about trying to maximize student learning and thinking about what we know of what goes into learning. How do we optimize and maximize learning? So when we think about eliciting frequent responses, what we're trying to do there is maximize the opportunities for students to learn and for students to be engaged with instruction. So we know from lots and lots of research that when students are actually doing something, responding or writing or gesturing, any kind of time they're actively involved in doing something related to learning, that's going to maximize and increase the amount of learning that happens. So by making sure that we're eliciting frequent responses from students during instruction, that's going to allow them to really engage in learning and to maintain their cognitive processing during the lesson. When we talk about providing immediate specific feedback, that's the sort of right on time feedback that's going to ensure that learning is happening, right? So we want to be able to check in with students to make sure that this practice and these responses that they're giving are right on track. And if they're veering off a little bit or if they're confused, we want to be able to jump right in and correct that right away, providing that kind of feedback and to encourage and reinforce correct responses. So these 2 supporting practices are really critical in really maximizing student learning. And these are things that, that we can do. And oftentimes we see instruction that doesn't have these things built in. So by understanding kind of what goes into these two practices, we can really improve and adapt instruction to make it more intensive and more responsive. Okay, opportunities to learn and practice. Here at UConn, we like to talk about basketball. So to start off, I'll tell a little bit of an example using basketball as a way to think about what it means for having opportunities to learn and practice. So say you're a basketball player and you're learning a new technique for shooting free throws. Your coach has taught it to you, she's modeled it for you, so she's shown you step by step kind of what it looks like, what are the features, breaking it down, and she showed you how to do it. And now she's going to give you practice on how to do that. So when you think about it, how are you going to get better at this new strategy, this new technique that you've just learned? The way you're going to get better is by practicing, right? You need to shoot some free throws. And what we want to do with instruction is maximize the opportunities for students to be able to do this kind of practice. So let's think about basketball. There's a couple of ways for the coach to do this. One is that all 10 of us could line up on the foul line, and one at a time, we could each take 10 free throws using this new technique. So that's good for the student or the player that's taking the free throws. That student is actively engaged. They get 10 practice opportunities. Each one of those counts. The other students, though, while that's happening, are sort of standing there in line. And if you're last in line, you know you have some time where you can kind of tune out and maybe not pay attention. Another way that we could do this is maybe divide the team up into pairs and kind of move around the gym and be at the different foul lines. And then it could pair off. One student practices the foul shot with a new technique. The other student gets a rebound and passes it back. So that's where during the same amount of time, multiple students are going to get these opportunities to practice because there's these pairs that are doing it at the same time. So in the same overall amount of time, each of these players are getting the same amount of practice, and we're kind of maximizing those opportunities to practice. And also the pair who's getting the rebound and shooting it back is also still engaged in the activity because they're actively doing something. Another way to do it probably, which would be even best, is if it was just one-on-one. So the coach was there with the player, and every time the player shot the ball and practiced the foul shot, we get some immediate feedback with that. So that's what we're trying to do here when we're thinking about maximizing opportunities to learn and practice. How can we schedule practice opportunities and build them in so that we're really maximizing the amount of time that students, when they're learning about word reading, the amount of time for them to actually do something, to read a word, to say the sound of a letter, to read a sentence, to write something down. And that's what we're doing here. So when we're eliciting frequent responses, some things to think about is, one is we want to select the most appropriate response format. And we can think about this around the kind of type of response, how many students are involved in the response, and about how much time this might take if we're building this into a lesson. And then the goal is to maximize engagement and opportunities to practice. So let's think a little bit about how we can think about the response format for how we schedule and plan for these opportunities to learn and practice. So one way we can think about is, what's the response? So we can have a verbal response, a written response, or a gesture. So verbal might be, I'm going to read the word. Written might be that I'm going to write a letter down, or I'm going to write the word. Gesture might be a thumbs up. It could also be maybe moving manipulatives around. So all of those things are different kinds of responses that we can provide when we're practicing. Who's involved in the opportunities to practice? We can give individual students opportunities to practice. We can have pairs or small groups, and then we can also do something as a whole group as well. Finally, we could kind of think about the sort of continuum of time. Is this something that's going to take a short amount of time and maximize numbers of opportunities, or is this something that's going to take a longer amount of time and maybe not have as many opportunities within that period of time? So these are some things that we're going to talk about and be able to kind of think about different types of response formats in word reading and how it kind of fits with these different characteristics. And then, the ultimate goal of this too is, one, we want to make sure that every student is getting lots of opportunities to practice and to do something. The other thing is, we want to keep all students' heads in the game, right? So again, kind of going back on the basketball metaphor a little bit, but we want everybody to be cognitively involved in the lesson and in the activity. So you have to be involved cognitively if you're doing something. If you're not doing something, there's other ways where we can make sure that kids are still right there, involved, paying attention, even if someone else is responding. So we also want to think about whether or not these kinds of responses and different formats are keeping kids' heads in the game during the lesson. So let's talk a little bit about some different examples. All right, so here's our small group of kids. They look like they're all ready to learn. And so we're going to think about some different ways that we can think about eliciting responses, and we'll talk about them on our kind of response format chart. Okay, so we could say touch a finger for each sound in sun. So I might say touch a finger for each sound in sun. Ready? S, n. And again, this is something I could have everybody do at the same time. So what kind of a response is that? This is a gesture, right? So kids aren't saying anything, but they're touching a finger for each sound in the word sun. S, n. And I could call an individual student to do this, but in this particular example, we're trying to have the whole group say it at the same time, right? So everybody, each of these 6 kids is getting an opportunity to practice because I'm giving them all at the same time. So we can sort of think about this. This is a pretty short response, and we're getting a lot of kids involved. So these kind of group responses really kind of maximize how many kids get responses. Okay, let's try another one here. Who wants to come up and spell this word on the board? So think a little bit about that and how you would rate it based on these characteristics. All right, so it's written, right? So they're going to come up and write something. This is an individual student. because we're calling on someone to come up. And how long is this going to take? This is probably more on the long side here. So think about it. It's going to take a while for me to kind of think about who's raising their hand, and then I'm going to call on someone. Then that student has to come up to the board, and I give them the word, and they write it. And so that's going to take a while. And also think about the engagement piece. Our kids' head's going to be in the game. We know that the student that comes up is, but the other students, it gives them a little bit of extra time maybe to kind of lose it a little bit, sort of have their minds wander and maybe not be quite as involved because they know that this student is going to go up and do that. They're kind of off the hook for a little while. Okay, how about this one? Okay, everyone read this word. I'll touch each letter and you say its sound. We've seen this before when we've been looking at decoding. So what do you think about this one? All right, this is verbal in group. Everyone is going to be reading the word by saying each sound letter by letter and blending together. And again, this is going to take a fairly short amount of time. And are kids engaged? Yeah, because everybody has to be doing it. It's a group response. So everyone is engaged throughout this opportunity. All right, here's another one. Turn to your partner and take turns reading the sentence. All right, what do you think? Verbal? Because they're reading. This is a pair, so that this is where students in pairs are going to be reading the sentence to each other. And this probably is sort of in the middle. Kids are reading in pairs so that they're taking turns, and it's not a really quick thing. It's going to take a few minutes for them to read back and forth. But again, it's probably going to be more efficient than going around the room and having each student read a sentence. How about this one? All right, Jimbo, your turn to read the first sentence. Okay, good. Anne, your turn to read the next sentence. I bet you can already guess what's going to come next. All right, Marco, your turn to read the next sentence. All right, so what am I doing here? One, giving everybody verbal opportunities to read the sentence. I'm doing it individually, and this is probably going to take a long time because I have 6 kids here, and I'm going to go one by one for each kid. And what about kids being engaged during this activity, this response format? This is going to be a little bit tricky because you could see I'm going in a very predictable order, right? I'm starting at the one side with Jimbo, and then I'm moving on down the line. And so kids pretty quickly figure out what's happening there. And if I'm down on the end here, I probably know that I have a little while before I'm going to have to read the next sentence. And so there's incentive maybe, or there's a reason that I might not have to be engaged all the time. So again, we're giving kids individual responses here, which is good, but at the same time, it might be tricky to keep the whole group engaged. And when we get through with this whole activity, every student has only had one opportunity to practice, right? So if we counted them up for each student, they just get one chance. Okay, how about this one? Okay, everybody get ready to read the word. I'm going to call on someone. Ready? Anne, what word? Okay. Everybody get ready to read the next word. Sam, what word? All right, so this is verbal and individual, but I changed things up a little bit here because instead of just going in a predictable order, I randomly called on kids. And also, I made sure that I said, everybody get ready to respond when I call on you. So it's trying to facilitate everybody kind of figuring out and reading the word on their own before I called on them. So even though I'm calling on individual students, I'm really trying to get everybody to stay cognitively engaged with the lesson because they have to be ready to respond when I call, and they don't know the order that I'm going to do it in. Okay. Everyone write the letters for these sounds. F, I, sh. All right, this one's written, and it's group. And this is going to take a fairly short amount of time, although it might be a little bit longer because whenever you have kids writing things down, sometimes it takes a while. Another way to do this could be actually to be able to move letter tiles or something like that, or choose letter tiles, and that would change it into gesture, and it might actually make things a little quicker because kids aren't having to write. Again, this takes a fairly short amount of time, and every student gets an opportunity because they're doing it together. Okay, so one of the things that you've seen from this is that we can think about selecting different kinds of response formats. And what we want to do when we choose those kinds of formats is really think about how we can maximize the engagement of all the kids and maximize the number of opportunities that kids have to do something. Again, whether that's writing something down or saying something or doing something as a gesture. And really when we think about it, we know from research that what really counts is just counting up the number of opportunities to respond per students per minute. And we can really think of it as just almost even a count. So if we have 2 minutes of instruction and you count up how many responses each student received during that few minutes of instruction, what we want to do is maximize that number. And again, that's how you see where something like a group response or a pair response is going to add up a lot faster than going around and having individual responses. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of examples, and we're going to look to see whether or not we're maximizing opportunities to practice, eliciting frequent responses, and having kids stay engaged. So to help me out with this, I'm actually going to have Marnie come in and pretend to be a student. Hey, Marnie. Marnie is working on learning her letter sounds and some letter combinations, so she's going to help us out with this for a few minutes. I'm also going to kind of time a couple of these examples to sort of see how much time it takes and how many total opportunities to practice do we get with these kind of different ways to go about providing these responses. Okay, so I'm going to start my stopwatch. Here we go. All right, Marnie, we're going to be working on practicing some of our letter sounds and letter combinations. So I want you to sort of look at these for a few minutes and see if you can decide one that you want to practice.
I think I want to practice this letter.
Okay, that's great. That's a good one. All right, so what sound does that letter make?
Ah.
Okay, great. All right, look again and see if you can decide another one that you want to practice.
Let's practice this one.
Okay, that's a good one. And what sound does that make?
Air.
That's R. What is it?
R.
Okay, good. All right, pick one more. Okay, what sound is that?
Ah.
All right, good job. All right, I'm stopping that. That was about 48 seconds. And how many opportunities did Marnie get to practice? She picked 3 letters and letter combinations, so she got 3. And you made one mistake, and then you got a chance to do it over again. So that was probably 4 altogether. So 4 opportunities to practice in 48 seconds. Okay, let's try it a different way. Here we go. Start. All right, Marnie, we're going to practice our letters and letter combinations. So I'm going to point to one, and when I point, you say its sound.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, ready, sound. Ready, sound.
Oi.
Ready, sound.
Ah.
Ready, sound.
I.
Ready, sound. Sorry.
S.
Ready, sound.
R.
Ready, sound.
E.
Ready, sound.
T.
Sound. Sound.
Ah.
Sound.
S.
Sound.
Sh.
Sound.
N.
All right, great job saying those sounds.
Thanks.
All right, so that was 40 seconds. And let's see, we probably did, what, almost all of these?
Yeah, I should have been counting.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So at least 10 or 11 opportunities to practice in less amount of time. So we see that each time that she got a chance to practice, that counts. That's maximizing learning. So you can see that this is eliciting these kind of responses. We really just want to count up how many practice opportunities we get during that time. Thank you, Marnie.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, so this next component here is taking a minute to evaluate a lesson. And this lesson will be in your workbook. But what I want you to do is, when you stop the video, is to go and read this lesson and basically think a little bit about the types of response formats that we see in this. So read through and kind of think about what are the types of responses. Are they verbal? Are they written? Are there gestures? How many students would be involved? Is it whole group? Is it small group? Is it individual kids? And then think a little bit about whether or not you think these types of response formats are maximizing engagement and opportunities for kids to practice. And think about whether this is kind of maximizing the number of opportunities per minute. So I'm going to stop this and just take a few minutes and kind of read through and think a little bit about these features that we're trying to look for when we're talking about eliciting responses. All right, welcome back. You had a chance to take a look at this lesson and think about eliciting responses. So let's sort of take a look at this in a little more detail and see what we have here. So what are the different kinds of responses that we have? First, let's take a look about the objective and see what we're doing here. So this is about reading decodable text. So we're getting students to be able to read words that they can decode in sentence form within a book. So this is probably a short decodable book where there's sort of short sentences on each page, but that the different words are words that students can sound out to themselves or sound out using strategies they've already been taught. So page 1 has a very exciting sentence, "My cat," said Jan, "I can pat it." So this is a format or a lesson to get kids to practice reading sentences within a story like this. So let's see what kind we have. All right, so first we have group practice. So we're getting students to read the sentence word by word together, which is not an easy thing to do, but you can see here that the procedure is that you have the students touch under the first word, and then you say think and give them time to kind of sound out the word in their head, and then you say word and tap, and that all the students say the word at the same time. And then you say next word, think, word, tap. And then so you sort of have them be reading together word by word. And this is a little tricky, but when you get students to be able to do this all together, it's a way to read sentences word by word in a group format. So we have some group responses going on, and kids are reading out loud, so that's verbal. Then we also have individual practice here, and this says when the group has read the story, call on individual students to read one sentence at a time, while other students read along silently. Call on select students to read in an unpredictable order. So these are individual practice opportunities, and we know that this takes a little bit longer and we don't get the same number of opportunities because we're going student by student. But a lot of times it's really important to make sure that individuals get a chance to do it, especially if these are students that you're not quite sure are following along and you want them to get an extra chance, and you also want to make sure that you're hearing them do it without the other students. We're calling on students in an unpredictable order, so that's going to hopefully increase the engagement and keeping kids' heads in the game. And then we have a piece down here where there's additional practice. So where partners pair up and they reread the story using the partner reading routine. So that makes it seem like they're something that they've already been doing, so they understand what they're supposed to do when they do partner reading. So we see here a combination of different kinds of formats for eliciting responses. We have some group responses, then we have individual practice, not all kids, just some of the kids that are selected, and then we have practice in pairs. So we're really trying to kind of take advantage of both maximizing the number of different times that kids get a chance to practice, and we're kind of doing a couple of different types of formats that probably have different strengths. So summing up a little bit the idea of eliciting frequent responses. Every time kids get a chance to do something, it counts. That makes learning happen. Even if it's a small thing, like saying the sound of a letter or putting your thumb up, all those things count. And we want to see if we can incorporate as many opportunities for kids to do something, to respond, to practice as possible. So some things to keep in mind is one of the things that we're not so good at is including group responses. And when we look at the kind of matrix we had, group responses are really the way to be able to maximize the number of opportunities that every student gets in the shortest amount of time, because everybody is responding at once. And this is hard though. So when we do this, when we think back to the part where we talked about practice opportunities, we want to be able to kind of give prompts and signals to keep kids together if we're doing group responses. So signaling lets them know when they're all supposed to respond together, and the same thing with prompts, pointing and signaling. So trying to include more group responses is a really good, effective way to increase opportunities to practice and respond. We also sort of saw that by doing things in really small groups or pairs maximizes kids' chance to practice because they're doing it with each other. One of the things about this that's really important to think about, though, is that kids on their own aren't particularly good at just pairing up and doing this in an effective way. So it really requires making sure that students understand what you're supposed to do when you're practicing in pairs. A lot of programs and routines spend a lot of time practicing what it looks like to work in pairs. Here are the rules, here are the procedures, here's how you do it, so that it's not just, okay, break up in pairs and to do something, but doing it in the way that you really understand the routine and kids know what they're supposed to do. But that can also be a really powerful way to maximize responses. And finally, if you're going to do individual turns, individual responses, you might not necessarily have to do every student, right? You maybe only want to do ones for targeted students, those kids that you really want to check on to make sure that they're following along and that they're on track. The other thing about these is you want to make sure that you're calling on students in an unpredictable way and doing it so that they're short, so that you move through these quickly. All right, so the next few activities is we're going to be watching a few videos that you've seen before, and we're going to be looking for response formats and also whether or not we're maximizing engagement and opportunities to practice. So what I'd like you to do is watch these videos, jot down some notes about what kind of responses you see, and also go ahead and sort of count up how many opportunities each student gets during the course of the video that you watch.
The whole time. Now we're going to read some of these words that we just practiced.
Yay!
Yay!
Yay! Yay!
Okay, my turn to read a word that begins with a quick sound. Now, you have to watch. This one starts with a quick sound, so I got to get right to the next sound, okay? My turn first. Here I go. Pan. Now I'll say it fast. Pan. The word is pan. Let's read this word together. Now watch carefully because it starts with a quick sound. So we have to get right to our neighbor. Ready, go. Pan. Say it fast.
Pan.
What's the word?
Pan.
Pan. Now do it without me. Okay, I'm not going to help you this time. Hook it to your neighbor. Ready, go.
Pan.
Say it fast.
Pan.
What's the word?
Pan.
Good job. Your turn to read this word. First you'll say the sound slowly, then you'll say them fast. Watch the pen. Ready, Joseph? Ready, Carl? Mark, he's ready. I can see his eyes. Ready, go. Say it fast. Am. Nice job. We don't need to clap during this part. Way to be ready, though, Carl. Okay, now we're going to read another word, and I'm going to start it because it starts with a quick sound. So this is Mrs. Rietma's turn. I'm going to get right to the next sound. Here I go. Did. My turn first, sweetie. I'm glad you're ready, though, but let me have a turn this time, okay? Did. I'll say it fast. Did. The word is did. Now, this time do it with me. You ready? Carl, Marky, Joseph, all of us. Ready, go. Did. Say it fast.
Did.
What's the word?
Did.
Did. Thanks for a quiet table. Now it's your turn without me. You're going to hook it to your neighbor on your own. Ready, go.
Did.
Say it fast.
Did.
What's the word?
Did.
You read the word did without me. Good job. This one also starts with a quick sound. This one starts with a quick sound, but I'm not going to help you this time. You guys ready? You're going to hook it to your neighbor. Ready? Read it. You got to hook it to your neighbor, so you're going to go, him. Try it again. Ready? Go.
Him.
Try it again. Ready? Go.
Him.
Say it fast.
Him.
Carl, can you come out of your shirt, please? Thank you. Let's do it one more time now that we have Carl's head. Ready? Go.
Him.
Say it fast.
Him.
What's the word?
Him.
You read the word him. Good job. Good job. Okay, now I'm going to give you some turns with the cards. Mix them up. You don't know which one you're going to get. You got to be ready.
Yes, we do.
You never know. Bam. There it is. Good job.
Did.
Say it fast.
Did.
Good. Hooking it to your neighbor, Marky. Okay, Carl, you got the hard one.
Ha.
Don't say huh. Get it to the next one. Ready?
Him.
Say it fast.
Him.
Perfect job. Perfect job. Here comes a hard one, Joseph. Hook it to your neighbor.
Pan.
Say it fast.
Pan.
Nice job hooking it to your neighbor. Here we come, Marky.
M.
Do it slowly so I can hear you, okay?
M.
Thank you. Say it fast.
M.
Good job. Yeah, first we say it slow, then we say it fast. Are you awake? Are you ready? Here you go.
Did.
Say it fast.
Did.
Nice reading, Carl. Here you go, Joseph. You're going to hook it to your neighbor, okay? Now put those together. Like this. Hey, your turn.
Him.
Say it fast.
Him.
Nice job. Good job, boys. Right.
All right, in this video, after you watched it, this was Amy working with some kindergarten students on word decoding. And the thing that they're working on is blending through words that begin with a short sound, right? So that you have to you can't hold it out, you really have to say it quickly and blend right through into the vowel. And this is a new skill for students, so you see quite a bit of modeling that she's doing for students. And then she's doing group responses. And she does a group responses where she has kids say the sounds and then read the word and then say the word again. So for each word, kids are getting 3 quick responses and group responses. And the kids are doing a good job responding together. And then at the end, she does individual responses for each of the 3 kids. She does it pretty quickly, and she calls on kids in an unpredictable order so that all kids get a chance. You could definitely see that during that time, the other students are probably getting a little bit less engaged because they know that they're not having that turn right at that minute. But I think, in a sense, I think she wants to make sure that each student has an individual turn. So because this is a real introductory lesson, we see that there's a little bit heavier emphasis on the modeling piece, but we do see that even within a short amount of time, each of these students is getting multiple opportunities to practice the new skill. Okay, the next video you're going to watch, as we've seen this before, this is a video where they're practicing a regular word reading.
To give us context.
Nice job. Zoe is sitting up to the table. She's not talking. She doesn't have her hand on the Post-it note, so she's ready to learn. My turn. Word do. Your turn. Word
Do.
Spell do.
D-O.
Word
Do.
wait until I slide, which Heidi did a nice job of waiting until I slid. My turn. Word do. Your turn. Word spell do.
D-O.
Word
Do.
my turn. Word me. Your turn. Word
Me.
spell me.
M-E.
Word
Me.
my turn. Word my. Your turn. Word
My.
spell my.
M-Y.
Word
My.
my turn. Word for. Your turn. Word
For.
spell for.
F-O-R.
Word
For.
such a nice job. Everybody responded right when I signaled. When I point to the left of the word, figure out the word in your head. When I slide my hand underneath the word, you'll read the word. My turn. Let me show you how. Word do. Word me. Your turn. Word.
Do.
Oh, wait till I slide. Word.
Do.
Wait till I slide. Word.
Do.
Word.
My.
My turn. Word me. Your turn. Word
Me.
spell me.
M-E.
Word.
Me.
Word.
Do.
Everybody say it together. Word. Wait till I slide. Word.
Do.
Wait till I slide. Word.
Do.
Word.
Me.
Word.
My.
Word.
For.
Word.
Fed.
Oh, wait till I slide. Word.
Fed.
Nice job, Zoe and Heidi, waiting until I slide. Word.
Fed.
Word.
Do.
Word.
My.
Word.
Me.
Word.
Me.
Word.
My.
Word.
You.
Word.
Do.
Word.
You.
Word.
Fed.
Word.
For.
Word.
My.
Oh my gosh, you guys all waited until I slid my hand. Individual turns. Word. Heidi.
My.
Word. Everybody better be ready to read the word. Word. Taya.
Me.
Good. Word.
K.
Zoe.
My. You.
Oh, good job.
Okay, this is a lesson where they're practicing a regular word reading. And what you see here is that there isn't a lot of modeling. There's a little bit, but this is something that kids are really focusing in on practicing. And what she's doing here is really working hard on getting all of them to respond together. So she's working hard on group responses. And it takes a little while for the kids to get it, but then you see that they kind of really, they figure it out. And then by the end of this little very quick activity, she's moving along, and she's doing group responses on these different irregular words. And again, she's doing this really quickly, and kids are doing this together. And so each of those opportunities is multiplied basically by the number of kids that are in that group by being able to do those group responses. And then at the end, she does 3 really quick individual responses. So because this is a little bit more of a practice activity, there's less modeling, and you can see that the opportunities for kids to practice has increased and even more than it was in the previous example. So again, we're seeing that even within these short activities, these short pieces of lessons, kids get a lot of chances to do something. One, because they're doing it together as group responses, and when they're doing individual responses, they're moving pretty quickly through those. So these are both pretty good examples of trying to maximize engagement and giving kids lots of opportunities to practice. Okay, so eliciting responses and feedback. While we're learning this, we talked about how by eliciting frequent responses, we're maximizing kids' opportunities to learn and do the new skill and strategy, and also to maintain engagement throughout the activity. When you talk about providing immediate and specific feedback, that's ensuring that learning is happening. We want to make sure that as they're practicing, as they're responding, they're on the right track. And by doing that, we want to be able to provide this kind of feedback immediately on how they're doing, so that we're moving them along and we're ensuring that they're learning what we want them to learn. Okay, so ensuring that learning is happening. Back to our basketball example again. So let's think again about sort of taking free throws. We know that we're going to get better if we just keep practicing free throws. The more opportunities we get to practice, the better we're going to get. So let's say that we have someone that's getting rebounds for us, and they're handing us the basketball, and we're going to practice our free throws. And one of the things that there's a lot of things in life where we get feedback from the environment. Like, we know whether we're doing it right or wrong because we can tell right away from the environment. So if you're shooting free throws and you make it, how do you know? Well, you hear swish. You can see the ball go through the hoop. You know it's going in, and so you get feedback that, like, this was a successful free throw attempt. And how do you know if it's not successful? Right? Clang on the backboard or on the rim. So you're able to sort of adjust your shot a little bit to try to take into account that feedback that you just got from the environment. But one of the things about a lot of learning and cognitive tasks is we don't get feedback from the environment. And that makes for a very different kind of learning experience. So just imagine if you stand on the free throw line and you give a basketball, but someone blindfolds you and put headphones on, so you can't see anything and hear anything. And people just keep giving you a ball, and you're going to practice your free throw. So you're going to practice, you're practicing 10 times, you're practicing 20 times. After about 50 times, you're feeling really good. You get your form down. It's feeling like you're sort of automatic, and you're getting muscle memory on doing that. After about 100 opportunities, you're feeling really good. Someone takes off the blindfold and the headphones, and you see that you're throwing the basketball over the top of the basket. So that was practice. You had a lot of opportunities to practice, but none of those practice opportunities were really beneficial at all because you weren't getting feedback about whether you were being successful or not. Right? And in fact, it was probably counterproductive because you were learning something that was wrong, and by practicing in something that's wrong, you're going to reinforce that, and it's going to be even harder to correct that. So that's the case when a lot of tasks in reading. If you read a word wrong, you're not going to hear clang or swish from the environment. You need someone there to kind of give you that feedback about whether you're being successful or not. So that's what we're trying to do with providing specific feedback during word reading tasks, is make sure that kids are on the right track by telling them right away if they're doing well, if they're correct, or providing some feedback and some correction if they're doing something incorrectly. So one of the things about this is we want to provide feedback immediately. Another thing we want to do is when kids are giving correct responses, we want to affirm that in a very specific way. And finally, if their students are providing incorrect responses, we want to correct those. And then we also want to make sure that we provide additional practice on things that kids are having a hard time with. So let's talking about providing immediate feedback. So maybe we have this word list here, and we say, okay, your turn to read these words. So then the student starts reading the words: eat, beat, teal, meet, am. All right, so we see some mistakes there, right? So then the teacher chimes in, okay, let's go back to the ones you missed. So what's wrong with this? What are some things that are sort of problematic about kind of this idea of going back to the ones they missed at this point? Well, a couple of things. One is we could see right away what's happening at the very beginning. The student makes a mistake on the second word and reads beat instead of boat. And we see that maybe the student is sort of kind of stipulating on the first word, eat, and thinking that all these words have that same sound, E. And by not kind of jumping in and providing immediate feedback right after the mistake, we're letting the student kind of go through the rest of the words and continue to make those kind of same mistakes and reinforcing those same mistakes. And so by the time we get to the end, we're really kind of losing the immediacy of being able to provide feedback right away. So a different way to think about this would be, so that gets an X. So a different way to think about this would be, okay, your turn to read these words. The student starts off, eat, beat, and then right away we say, that word is boat. What word? And the student says, oh yeah, boat, and then continues on. So by correcting that error on boat right away, we're actually we're pre-correcting for these other errors that might be happening later. So the more quickly we can provide feedback on something, the more we can kind of reteach something right away. We can prevent errors from happening after that. And we also, students are thinking about it right there, so we don't have to go back and kind of explain, okay, here are some places where you made a mistake, and here are some things that were problematic. Right? So but the quicker we can provide feedback, the more immediate the feedback is, the more powerful and the more effective it's going to be. All right, we also want to affirm correct responses. So feedback should be specific. We really want to tell students what they're doing a good job on, not just not being vague, but sort of giving them specific feedback about what they're doing. Right? So a couple of examples of things that we say a lot is, great job. The thing about this is students don't know what they're doing a great job on. And especially during initial stages of learning, they may end up thinking that they're doing a great job of doing something very different than it was that they're actually doing. So a great job is not terrible, but it doesn't really let kids know what it is that they did a good job with. And it's very vague. Also saying things like, oh, you're so smart, again, really isn't sort of reinforcing them for specifically what they've done. It's sort of this kind of generic kind of thing to say that is really different from the task at hand. Also, this kind of sets up this idea that if you make an error, you're not so smart, right? So it has this kind of value-laden component to it that we want to stay away from. Sometimes you don't get feedback at all if you get something correct. And oftentimes what we see is the only time kids get feedback is if they do something wrong. So if they do something right, they don't get acknowledged or recognized or affirmed for that. But if they get an incorrect answer, that's when they get a lot of attention and a lot of reinforcement, except unfortunately it tends to be more punished for getting an incorrect answer than reinforced for getting a correct answer. So what we want to do instead is to give very specific feedback. So, nice job reading the word boat. Or, yes, the sounds in eat are eat. And this always sounds kind of silly. Nice job saying the sound for B. Or nice job reading the word boat. And it kind of sounds like, that sounds so, so unnatural to say that kind of thing. But what it really does is, one, it lets kids know exactly what it is they did right. And it's also a sneaky way to kind of reinforce or reteach the thing. Right? So if you say, nice job reading the word boat, kids are hearing the correct answer again. And maybe if it's an individual student, everybody hears that. So it's not a natural thing to do, but it's an easy thing to do. And it's one of those things that I think we can change our practice by doing this pretty easily. And it actually has some pretty substantial effects over time when we're really being specific in the positive feedback we give. Nice job reading the word boat. Great job saying the sounds in eat. Yes, that's right. The letter B makes the sound B. and it takes a little thinking, but it's a really powerful thing to do. And finally, it's fine to be, in some cases, if you're just moving along quickly, is to be sort of have positive affirmative body language and moving on. So you don't always have to stop and give positive reinforcement, specific reinforcement to every single correct answer if you're moving along something quickly. It's fine to sort of acknowledge it through body language and then move on. So we talked about providing immediate feedback, affirming correct responses, and now we want to also think about correcting incorrect responses and providing additional practice. All right, so this is what happens all the time. We have a word. Okay, it's your turn to read this word. Student says, bite. Now what do we do? This is one of the hardest things, I think, and one of the things that I know when I was a teacher, I did this all the time. So our first instinct is to think in our heads, oh, I know the student can do this. I just need to give them another shot. So we say things like, oh, that's not quite right. Try again, or think harder, or look harder. And when you think about it, those are pretty kind of silly things to say. Generally, it's a good place to start by assuming that if students knew what the right answer would be, they would have said it in the first place. So assuming that an incorrect answer really just means that they need to get retaught it a little bit. So the worst thing is when you say, oh, that's not quite right, look again, try a little harder, think harder this time, and then students kind of look at you and say, bite, and then they've said the incorrect answer multiple times and you're reinforcing an incorrect answer. The other thing about this is it grinds the lesson to a stop, and it really points out and kind of it puts all the emphasis on that one student that made a mistake, and it can put them in a really uncomfortable situation. So sometimes it feels like we're giving them an extra chance, when instead what we're doing is really drawing attention to that student in that error. So those are things that we don't want to do. We don't want to be sort of saying, oh, hold on, that's wrong, or try harder, or I know you know this one. I know you're smart. Think about this one and try again. That's what it feels like we want to do. But instead, what we should do is, your turn to read this word, bite. This word is boat. What word is this? And that time, for sure, the student's going to say boat because you've just given them the correct answer. Oh, and there she did. She said boat. So what we really want to do is when students make a mistake, what we want to do is immediately just model the correct response. We're going to assume that if they got something wrong, it's not on purpose. They didn't do it just to slow everything down, that they just need to sort of hear the right answer and sort of get retaught it. So we're going to model the correct response. We're going to give the student another opportunity to respond. And then we're going to come back to the missed item later in the activity. A lot of times I say to my classes and students is, this might be the sort of number one thing that you can do that's really easy to do that could make a huge difference in your practice, which is using this kind of common procedure for correcting errors when students make mistakes. The couple of things about it. One, it's really fast. It doesn't take time away from instruction at all. You move right on, and half the time other students don't even realize that a student made a mistake because you're going so quickly. That's the other thing that's good about it, is that it doesn't draw attention to the student. It doesn't slow things down. It doesn't make an example of the student that made a mistake. It gives them the correct answer. They get another opportunity. They're successful right away, and then later on they can come back to it and you can give them another chance. So this really simple error correction procedure makes a huge difference in maximizing kids' opportunities to participate. It decreases times where we're kind of calling out kids, and it really ensures that we're going to move towards mastery in a much more efficient and effective way. All right, I'm going to show you a couple of examples with this, and since Marnie is working on her letter sounds and letter combinations, I'm going to have her come up and do this with me. Hi, Marnie.
Hi, Mike.
Okay, so I know where you're working on these, so we're going to practice. And I know sometimes that you make some mistakes once in a while.
Once in a while.
Okay, so I'm going to point to some letters, and you're going to tell me what sound these letters make. Okay, ready? What sound?
Oi.
What sound?
A.
Oh, okay, hold on a minute. You know this one. Think again. What do you think this is?
E.
Not quite. Is anyone else? Can anyone else help Marnie? Anyone else know what this is? Okay, so that's the example. You saw that she made a mistake. I thought that she could do it, so I gave her another chance. She still didn't get it. Now I'm calling on other students. We've sort of completely slowed down the lesson, and she was reinforced again for a mistake that she made multiple times. So that's not the most efficient or effective way to do that. So let's try again. Okay, Marnie, ready? I'm going to point to these letters, and you're going to say the sound. What sound?
Oi.
Okay, what sound?
A.
Ah. The sound is ah. What sound?
A.
All right, great job saying the sound ah. What's this?
E.
Sound?
N.
Good. Let's go back to this tricky one again. What sound?
A.
Great job saying the sound ah. All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you see in that example, when she made a mistake, I just went ahead and gave her the correct letter sound, gave her another opportunity, went on and did a couple more, and then we came back to the tricky one again to make sure that she had it. And so again, it doesn't disrupt the flow of the lesson at all. So we can also think about how we would use correction procedures with other kinds of word reading skills. So for example, word reading. And Marnie's going to come in and help with this too. So one of the things we want to do is we might have a little bit different correction procedures depending on what kind of errors there are. And we want to try to match the correction procedures as closely as we can to different types of errors. So one kind of error could be that when students are blending, that they don't blend through the letters, that they stop or they add the schwa sound. So in this situation, it might look something like this. So I'm going to point to each letter and you say its sound. Try not to stop between the sounds.
B. O.
All right, try to blend them together. Bow, like that. Try it.
Boat.
That's right. And read the whole word.
Boat.
Great job. Reading the word boat. The next kind of error could be that if they say a wrong sound, and the hard thing here, but it's good if you can do it, is to correct the sound as soon as you hear it. So let's try this again. I'm going to touch under each letter you say its sound. Don't stop between the sounds. Ready? Go.
Ba.
Oh, the sound is O. What sound?
O.
Okay, let's try again. Ready?
Boat.
What word?
Boat.
Great job reading the word boat. Another thing could be that they say the sounds, but they don't blend it correctly. So let's try that. Ready? Ready, go.
Boat.
What word?
Bat.
This word is boat. Let's try sounding it out one more time. Ready? Go.
Boat.
What word?
Boat.
That's right. You read the word boat. Great job reading the word boat. All right, thank you. Okay, so the concluding activity for this part is going to be evaluating a video. And you see here we have our kind of continued checklist of all the things that we've been thinking about. And so when you review this video, I want you to think about the features of effective models and effective guided practice. Although primarily what we want to focus on for this one is eliciting responses and providing feedback. So that's the place where I want you to focus most of your attention. Although also look to see whether or not you feel like there's effective modeling happening and whether there's also effective guided practice.
Very good. Very, very good, guys. Great job. Okay, the next thing we're going to move to today, we're going to work on our segmenting. Remember, I'm going to have 3 lines here on the board. We're going to say the entire word, and then we're going to take that word apart, and you're going to tell me the sounds that make up that word. Is everybody ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Wow, what great manners you have. Okay, everybody say chat.
Chat.
Sounds.
Chat.
Perfect. Are you ready? We're going to start with you, and we're going to go around the table. This is your word. Say chop.
Chop.
Sounds.
Up.
Good. Berenice, are you ready? Say the word pitch.
Pitch.
Sounds.
Pitch.
Good. Ashley, your word is match.
Match.
Sounds.
Match.
Good. And are you ready?
Yeah.
Your word is quack.
Quack.
Sounds.
Quack.
Fabulous. Very good. Okay, we're ready to move on to manipulating those sounds. Remember, on this one, we have our line and we have our box. You're exactly right. And on this part, we're going to say the entire word. Tell us again.
Signal.
Yeah, and you're going to tell me what's left right here in the box, right? Okay, so we'll say the whole word. We'll take off that first part of the word, and you tell me what's left in the box. Actually, I think we're going to start with you on this one. Are you ready? Okay, I want you to say the word chin.
Chin.
Drop the ch.
In.
Perfect. I want you, Taylor, to say check.
Check.
Drop the ch.
Ick.
Perfect. Berenice, can you say chill?
Chill.
Drop the ch.
Liu.
Oh,
chill.
what is it?
Chill.
Chill. Now drop the ch.
Liu.
Oh, that's a good guess, but you're adding another sound right there in the beginning. I'm going to give you another one. You know what? I want you to do the word chop.
Chop.
Drop the ch.
Up.
Good. Try another one. Chess.
Chest.
Drop the ch.
Est.
Good. That's it. Okay, are you ready? Your word is check. Say that.
Check.
Drop the ch.
Ick.
Good. Berenice, can you do chick?
Chick.
Drop the ch.
Ick.
Perfect. You got it. Good. We are going to go on to our reading list. Okay? We've already warmed up with our sounds, and so I'm going to put some words on the board today for us to read. Are you ready? This first word we're all going to do together. I want you to look at the sounds that make up this word. We're going to blend each of those together. Now, before we start, I want you to look here at the end. Think about all of those that go together. Wow, you didn't even give me a chance to back us up and start at the beginning. Okay, we know right away that TCH goes together and says what?
Patch.
That's right. So let's go ahead and come back here.
Patch.
Patch. Patch.
Before completing this module, be sure to complete the journal entry on Husky CT. There are resources and more directions in your activity workbook.